Yeah, I'll just do it. It's not.
Yeah, thank you.
Morning, everyone who's joining. Hello. Thanks for waiting in the waiting room there. Hello. Hi, Jackie.
Hi.
Hi, Delia. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I think it's a nice cold morning from where everyone's dialing in from, so thanks for jumping onto our call. Just to let you know that we are recording the event today, so it'll be uploaded on our website so other people can benefit from today's session. Just bear that in mind. If there's ever anything that you are not comfortable with being uploaded, let me know and I can remove it from the video later. And not all of you we've met before, so hello to the new people on the call and also hello to the people we do already know, and thanks for joining us again. Um, I'll introduce us on the call to get us started off. Um, I'll introduce us after doing acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Wajak Noongar Boodja, and the WASEC offices are based in Walyup in Fremantle. And we like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country that we work from and the traditional owners of the country that we all come from and that we are creating our social impact in. And we acknowledge their leadership in the work that we do. And hello to any Indigenous people who are on the call today, and thank you for joining us. My name's Rosie, and I'm the membership coordinator for WASEC. And I've been working here for about a year or so, but I've been working with social enterprises for a couple of years. And also on the call, we've got Olivia, who's the CEO of WASEC. And we've also got Jackie on the call, and she's our running our social impact incubator, which is a new program that we're doing. So hello to all the WASEC staff on the call. And I'd like to introduce Melanie Bainbridge from Lotterywest, who's presenting our presentation today. Hello, Melanie. Thank you. Melanie's a very experienced person in this area, and we're really lucky to have her presenting with us. And she has been running around the state of WA recently, delivering a lot of events to a lot of different community groups and business networks and regions. So no questions are too big or too small for Melanie. She's probably seen it all and is also a very warm, inviting person. So thanks, Melanie, for being here. Today we're going to be looking at the Lotterywest Community Impact Hub for planning, outcomes measurement and funding readiness, something that all of us on the call are probably really, really, really interested in and want to upskill in. It's certainly something that I want to upskill in. And Melanie Bainbridge is the Senior Manager of Impact Design and Capability at Lotterywest. She's got over 20 years of experience in impact strategy, community-led innovation, which is what we're all working in. And she works with organisations across WA. She's also the founder of a really cool social enterprise called the Pack Cooperative, which is the Music Pack.
Yeah, the Pack
The
Cooperative,
Pack
you're quite
Cooperative, which is a online streaming platform that's designed to ensure artists are paid first. So it's sort of like an antithesis to Spotify, which is really cool and really needed. I don't know if anyone's ever made music in this call, but you know, it's awesome to get some money back to the artists. So Melanie also has hands-on experience creating impact in her personal life and her businesses. Um, Broadly, Lotterywest is one of the most important funders for social and environmental impact in WA, and we are so lucky that we have Lotterywest in WA. Not every state does have Lotterywest. It's one of our major funders. It's the first funder of WASEC, and it's the reason that WASEC exists. So thank you to Lotterywest. So they're an incredibly important partner of us. They're an incredibly important funder, and thank you to Lotterywest for your support of WA social enterprises because they have been a major supporter of many social enterprises in WA. So I think that's all from me. So just welcoming Melanie here. And I was wondering if people in the call wanted to say a quick g'day. We haven't got much, well, we probably have about 30 seconds each to say hello. And if you'd like to share the organisation that you're working with or the role that you're thinking about in this call and what brings you here today and what you'd like to learn about outcomes measurement. If you don't want to say hello, that's totally fine as well. So it's nice to get to know each other a little bit. So I might go for unpick people out if that's not too rude and invite Anushka to say hello and introduce yourself if you'd like to.
Yeah, sure. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Anushka. I am the founder and CEO of Plenty Gifting. Plenty is a new meal gifting service here in Perth. You can send someone a delicious meal instead of a bunch of flowers, and 100% of our profits go back into local emergency food relief. I'm here because while we're now operational, I definitely want to learn more about how to communicate our outcomes and yeah, that's why I'm here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Hi.
I'd love to say hello to Helia, who I haven't met before. If you'd like to say g'day. Hi, Helia.
Hi, hi everyone. Thanks for running this beautiful program. My name is Helia Singh. I'm a wealth coach, money coach. Been a financial advisor more than 20 years. My purpose and my belief is that's the only way give women financial freedom is just empowerment is just true financial freedom, and that's why I'm a big believer in impacting women and educating women to become financially independent.
Thank you. Thanks, Helia. Thanks for sharing. Gabby Howlett's on the call as well. Hello, Gabby. Good to see you again.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. We come with a new hat. I'm working for just been employed by Remote Op Shop Projects to start looking at getting their West Australian hub up and running and supporting their West Australian op shops in remote communities. So they exist to help remote communities start and set up op shops. We do a lot of circular economies, and the main thing is employment and empowerment, but then also just getting very, very basic needs to people in hard to get places, really.
Ah, huge. That's really exciting to hear. Can't wait to hear more about it.
Yeah, just it'd be good. I'm just getting back into the world.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, thanks, Gabby. Jackie, did you want to say hello as well? I'm just going down the list. Sorry for calling people out randomly, but hello.
Hi to everyone. A few familiar faces online. So I've just joined the WASEC team a couple of months ago, early May. So I've got a background in learning design and innovation kind of space. So a few familiar faces on here. And yeah, really excited to set up the incubator program. So that's really my focus at the moment. So yeah, looking forward to connecting with some of you in that respect as well.
Thanks, Jackie. JP's on the call. Hi, JP.
Think she said her
mic's not working.
she's staying on mute. Yeah.
JP's a long-time legend in WA and has been involved with WASEC for a long time and does a lot of different work. Simone Sash from Impact Relations is on the call.
Oh, hi. I've been doing work with what started to be public relations for some social enterprises, and it's kind of moving further, helping people with their stakeholder engagement, but they're working with organisations like Permaculture West, who were originally looking at helping the environment and now are working out how they can engage the community to help with young men, learn, upskill them and help them with mental health issues and things like that. And it's not something that I've ever had to measure. I've measured a lot of other stakeholder engagement things, but this is definitely unfamiliar territory, and I'd like to be able to get it right.
Yeah.
Thank
We've also got T on the call. If they'd like to say hello, feel free to, but feel free to not to as well. T. And Trixie is on the last on our list. Hi, Trixie.
Hey, thanks, Rosie. Hi, I'm Trixie. I recently joined WASEC as a research and advocacy coordinator. I have a background in mental health and psychosocial disability, so I have a big heart in that space and just really excited to learn from Melanie today.
Thank you. Thanks for saying hello, guys. It's nice to kind of get a bit of context on what everyone's working on. And I'll leave it now to Melanie to start your presentation.
Okay, I shall share my screen. Let's see how cleverly I can make tech work today.
Alrighty, from beginning. Yes, please, thank you. And I'm hoping that means you can see my screen, but not all my scribbly notes. Cross fingers. Alrighty. Thank you so much for having me today, everyone. One of my very favourite things as part of my role is getting to connect with amazing people like yourselves doing amazing things in the community. And as well, in the role that I have in sort of impact design and capability work, I get to do that an awful lot. So I spend most of my time, probably 50% of my Lotterywest time, engaging with great not-for-profits and local governments and social enterprises who basically are just trying to do good in the world. Pretty amazing job to have in terms of filling your cup, to be very honest with you. So I feel very lucky. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today from wherever you're meeting, and recognise their continued connection to the beautiful lands and waters of this place, and to pay my deepest and humblest respects to elders past and present. But also, and I know that we have dropped this from the acknowledgement a little bit, I'd like to pay respects to emerging leaders, because in the world that we're all inhabiting today, I kind of feel like we're going to need those voices more than ever. And I'd like to see them brought into that conversation as the leaders of the future. So that's why I've for my own acknowledgements, put them back in their place there, even though potentially there's a little bit of conflict around, the difference between an elder and a leader, and I do understand that semantic context. Rest assured, you don't have to take copious notes today if you don't want to, because you'll get a copy of all my slides and a comprehensive sort of resource pack after this session, which I will funnel through, Rosie, if that's okay with you. So there's a whole bunch of stuff coming at you after this session, which will unpack all of this for you. And I'll leave some time at the end of the session, obviously, for Q&A if you want to give me some quizzing. More than happy to do that. But let's jump into the prezzo proper. Okay, so as Rosie said, we're a little bit lucky in WA. Lotterywest is Australia's, if not the Southern Hemisphere's, only state-owned lottery. So it's the only publicly owned lottery where all of the money from lottery sales comes back into the community in some way or another. It's a little bit unusual for them not to be privatised by governments, to be very honest with you. So we have managed to get through 90 years without having been turned over to private corporate interests, which is lovely. As you would know, our revenue is lottery sales, and I know for a lot of people that can be a little bit problematic. Totally understand why, in terms of the damage problem gambling does do in communities. We are very proactive around that, and as I mentioned, as Lotterywest functions, it is only and always about giving back to the community. So when people buy a lottery ticket, it's a little bit more like buying, into the MSWA lottery and those kinds of things than it is randomly going on to gambling sites and betting on horses, obviously. So there is a distinction there, but to be noted, it is still a gambling-based organisation, and we are very cognizant of making sure that we do our greatest public good so that we can offset some of that. We only fund not-for-profits and local government authorities. So from the perspective of those online today who are, potentially social enterprises but profit for purpose, unfortunately, we can't actually fund you directly. But what you'll learn today isn't specific to Lotterywest funding. So what I do is actually a little bit about lifting all boats in the social impact sector. So it's not really only and I guess specifically about Lotterywest funding. It can be about any kind of funding that you might want to go for. So that could be other government grants. It could be philanthropic funding. It could even be around how you frame your offering for community funding. So think of this, I guess, session as more grants agnostic, if you like, or funding agnostic. So while I will, in the latter half of this session, go through how what we do today relates back to Lotterywest funding, just think of that as I talk through it as any kind of funding program, because it relates very sort of well to pretty much anything that you might want to go for. Now, Lotterywest's approach is outcomes focused. So unlike the old model of government funding, we don't just fund on whether or not you spent your money well. We now fund on outcomes and impact. And that's really what we measure at the end of your project when you're wrapping that up. So it's quite a different way, I guess, of assessing progress and assessing success of projects, because we all know, particularly in the social impact space, that money isn't a measure of success, truly. Impact is those measures of success that we want to be measuring, both as a funding maker, but also for our organisations that we do fund. Lotterywest is rolling applications, which means there are no deadlines. I think we might be one of the only funders in the state, though, that doesn't have kind of set funding deadlines around things, other than some of the small arts grants, smaller arts grants. Most funding processes do have funding deadlines, so just be making sure that you're aware of those if you're going for other funding. And Lotterywest is what's called a developmental grant maker. And that basically means we hold your hand right from the point at which you ring us and say, I'm thinking of this thing, to the point at which you're acquitting your grant, and we're talking about what learnings did you actually gain from that and what would you do differently next time. So there's no point in our grant making process where you're not supported by one of our gorgeous humans in Lotterywest. And I can assure you we have lots of gorgeous humans in Lotterywest. So what you can see on the screen in front of you is basically our community investment framework. It's the framework under which we give our funding. So this was born, if you like, in 2018, and it signified that shift from funding stuff and things and doing financial-based acquittals to moving towards that outcomes-based model. So it was that shift towards, measuring real community outcomes. But it is incredibly broad, as you can see. So you can see that what Lotterywest funds is sort of under a set of broad overarching priority areas, and those areas really do touch on pretty much a lot of the stuff that you guys would be doing. And we have made them quite deliberately broad so that our organisations who are doing amazing social good are not really constrained by, heavy funding expectations. This has been, as I said, in place since 2018, with a couple of years blip for COVID in between. As you can imagine, there was a real shift from most funding bodies towards doing COVID recovery for a period of time, and it just shifted the way we did funding. But when we came back after that period, we did a lot of research around how people were managing the idea of outcomes-based grant making. Were they managing it? And the bottom line is, what we discovered was actually, no, not really. It hadn't really shifted the way people were applying for grants, even though we were saying we're having a shift in the way we're assessing grants. And so what we discovered at that point in time, and through a lot of internal research assessing what was happening, we just discovered that, the basic truth is people didn't understand the outcomes funding space. They didn't necessarily understand outcomes measurement. And for a lot of our not-for-profits, and, honestly, we fund a lot of not-for-profits that are at the smaller end of town. They're not, giant organisations with multi-million-dollar revenues. They are small organisations who are largely volunteer-led and run with small boards, that kind of thing. We realised there wasn't really an equity in the system around how people were being given this information and how they were being supported. So lucky for me, that's where my role was born. And also where the tools and resources that you will see today were born. We acknowledged that we actually needed to give our grant-seeking organisations a lot more support in this space. And so now we do, which is why I am running around all over Western Australia delivering workshops like a crazy person, and I'm only really at my desk, 2 weeks out of every month, because I'm bouncing around basically trying to touch the hearts of people like yourselves and help you get to where you want to go. So how do we do that? We do that through a couple of things. First, direct engagement, just like this. And the second, by providing a range of resources and tools to try and make it a lot easier for you to go for funding, but also for you to frame your initiatives really well. So we built a free resource. It's called the Community Impact Hub. You can see him there on your screen. He's very fun, my baby. And basically, I use this to train and train and train to, I guess, to take a very, almost an elegant and simple approach, but a really DIY-able approach to effectively framing a logic and an outcomes measurement plan for you to get this really, really right at every point that you want to use it. So I'm going to jump into the hub in a minute. So you'll have to excuse my tech inelegance for that, because I'll do the stop share and then jump in and screen share thing. But before we do, I'm not going to spend a heck of a lot of time on the site content as a whole. I know you're all smart enough to move around a website, but I am going to spend a little bit of time on a couple of the tools that are really great for framing some of your impact. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time sort of bouncing you through a few of the pages that I think will be quite relevant to you guys. Then we're going to jump into the tools proper and do a bit of a live demo, which is heaps funny. And after that, we will jump back in and I'll sort of unpack a little bit of how is this relevant to grant applications and how can I use it to actually make my case for funding, but also potentially to frame my impact narrative for other stakeholders, boards, for your own communities. Sound all right? Winning at life? Love that. So I'm going to do my yucky little bit of tech grocery now. So please excuse the stop share and then try and share the Community Impact Hub to you. Let's do it. Magic. I'm hoping you can all see my baby. I am screen sharing the Community Impact Hub. So you can see across the top there, there's three kind of pillars that we work through. Understand your community, learn from others, and plan your project. I'm going to jump into understand your community just for a little second because I want to show you the Community Insights Australia tool. So jumping in here and then straight into Wellbeing in WA, doing a quick scroll, you'll come to track your community. Now, people often miss this one on the Community Impact Hub, and I think it's a real shame. So I'm thinking that we need to give it a bit more of a presence on the hub. So I've been talking to our developers about that. It's super, super cool for people like yourselves to basically prove your issue. So when you're going for grant funding or any funding or even building a case for philanthropy or building a case for community funding, you need to prove why the issue that you've got, that you're dealing with, the problem that you're seeing that you want to solve is actually a problem. And a lot of people in the past were coming through even to Lotterywest funding and saying, well, we know we've got a problem here. And when we ask them how they know, how can they demonstrate that it's a problem? They actually don't really know how to articulate that. We know we've got 50 people sleeping rough in our community, and we'll ask, how do you know? And they'll go, well, we've seen them. And that's all very well, but Lotterywest can't be everywhere all the time. We can't come and photograph the 50 people sleeping rough in your community. You have to somehow find a way to prove to us that that is an issue that exists and that it's an issue that you need to solve. So this is one way to make it a little bit easier for you to get the data that actually sort of can show what's happening in your community and that it is something that's meaningful for you to solve. So I'm going to open up. I'll just say there's a little manual here. It's really easy to follow. It's very, very step through. But even better than that, the lovely woman that built this site, Emma, actually does a demo webinar, which is in our Learn from Others space. And that's an even easier one to follow because you can literally play along online as you're watching her do the system. So I'm just going to jump in and show you what it looks like very briefly. Open. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. Can you now see the Insights tool loading up? No. Does that mean you're still seeing the other page?
We can see the page, but it's just got an error on the page.
Oh, it has too. Alrighty, let's do a refresh. Ha! Google Maps is down. Oh, rude. I'm not going to be able to fix that for you because that looks like it's a Google issue. But what I am going to show you is this. So what you would usually see there is a map of Australia and basically a heat map. And that heat map, basically, if you click on any one of these data sets, it will show you where those issues are most prevalent. It will enable you to actually scale that down to the area or to the communities that you want to be sort of delivering your benefits to. And it gives you a whole bunch, a massive range, and I'll show you how big this is in a second, a massive range of all the publicly available data sets that are out there that can show you some of the information around that. Hugely valuable when you're trying to prove that there's an issue or a problem in your community, because this will show you where you can find the data that supports that. So let's say what you wanted to know was something around mental health. You can find a whole bunch of information around mental health for an area, and quite specific, which is really good. So if you're creating a social enterprise around schizophrenia in a particular region, you could actually come here and find data on how many people are suffering from it, what that's doing in the community. And you can do that right down to SA1 level. So you can use the areas to actually go, well, if my target beneficiary group is a suburb, you can actually go right down to that suburb and see what's happening there in terms of the data sets available around that. You can overlay it with other data sets too. So let's say you wanted to know suicides in an Indigenous population in a particular area. You can collect that kind of data from here rather than running all over the digital world trying to grab those data sets, most of which are paid. So you end up behind a paywall going, crap, I can't access what I want to without shelling out. It's all here. So if you're looking for some data, come here first. I'll make sure that Emma knows Google Maps is down. And next time when you go in there, you'll see that as a beautiful creature. So apologies for that little tech glitch. Jumping back into here. Do jump into the Learn from Others tab and watch through that webinar when you've got time. Super useful. Alrighty. Not going to tell you too much about this stuff, just to let you know, case studies and insights for you guys are probably really valuable. Everything in here is filterable too. So if you're jumping into the case studies space, you can actually see what other amazing social enterprises and not-for-profits are doing in similar spaces to yourself. And the lovely thing about that is that they articulate both the things that went right, their success factors, if you like, but also some of the challenges that they encountered along the way. Super useful from the perspective of not falling into the same perils and pitfalls as other people have experienced, and particularly where they're around sort of licensing, or whether around challenges working with government, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't say that out loud, Chatham House rulesing that, but you know what I mean. You've all been there. So that's a great place to play. And you can see up here, filterable by keyword. So if you wanted to search mental health or something like that, you could. Filterable by our priority areas, so those wellbeing categories under which we fund. Filterable by region, but also if you want to put in a region or even a suburb in there, you can. And by target priority group as well. So you can filter all those things by all of those different things. And all of these spaces are filterable by the same stuff. Grant library, even if you're not necessarily going for a Lotterywest grant, is also a little bit useful from the perspective of seeing, hey, what else has been funded in my region that's similar? Who could I collaborate with? You know, who's doing amazing stuff that potentially I could hook up with and actually, you know, get a bit of a download from them about what they did, what went well, how did they seek funding? That kind of stuff is really interesting. Gives you a little bit of an idea of who's got what. Again, you can search for it by your suburb if you want to, if that's your target area space, or by mental health, or by disability, or by whatever space you're working in. But you can also get a little bit of information about who's funded what. If it's a sport one, it's usually Healthway. But if it is let's have a look. If it's a research, no, that's health promotion, that's Healthway too. Let's jump into here. If it is let's say a circus one, Oh, Healthway as well. So Healthway does health promotion, which will mean sport. Anything that's sporting in here is usually Healthway. They also do a lot of mental health work, but they also do a lot of arts work. So if you see, you can see there are an awful lot of sport reference grants in here, but you'll also see that. I suspect this one will be, it's Healthway as well, mental health. We've got a lot of these, haven't we? Healthway's funded a lot of stuff. But yeah, you'll find the Lotterywest ones in here. I might have that filtered to Healthway. That's probably what's happening at the moment. But anyway. And you can find any learning opportunities, webinars, and those kinds of things that are coming up in here too. So have a squiz at what's in the website. There's a lot of information in there, insight articles and webinars where you'll find Emma's walkthrough webinar, but a whole bunch of other webinars live in there as well. But that's not what you came for today. This is what you came for. So jumping into plan your project, the most important creature on the Community Impact Hub, by my estimation, of course, is the Community Impact Planner. And that is your suite of tools to just really, really get clear on your project plan and your funding ask and how you're actually going to measure your impact, not only to communicate back to your funders, but also to all of your other stakeholders, which you will have many of, no doubt. So, this consists of 3 tools, and you can see down the bottom here, each one of them has a cute little tutorial. They're around 1.5 to 2 minutes long, and they walk you through what you're going to see today. So, you know, after this session, jump in there. It'll give you a little bit of very, very simple detail, what to do first, what to do next, etc. And then you'll note that there are 3 tools, but that when I do this process, I actually don't start from the beginning. And there is a reason for that. So I'm going to jump into the tools proper in a moment. But these 3 tools consist of a very, very simplified theory of change. Now, if you guys have done theories of change before, and I suspect in the social impact space, some of you have, and particularly if you've done them with academics or consultants, you'll know that these run into the 30 pages and $30,000 worth of creature, and most emerging social enterprises, most emerging not-for-profits, most small not-for-profits can't afford to play that game. So we tried to equitize this as much as possible so it was absolutely DIY-able by any level of organisation. And the only thing that's different about what we would expect from a small not-for-profit who's only asking for 5K to a very large one that's asking for 5 million is a level of detail, so proportionality, if you like. So we go through these 3 tools with people, and basically this will form the skeleton of pretty much any kind of grant that you would want to go for. So once you've really got this right around your project, you've got it right for anything that you might want to flesh it out for. So the next tool that we've got is a logic model tool, and that's kind of the guts of your application. And it really is just a way of stepping through your project in the most logical way you can and demonstrating how you're going to get from the issue you've identified that you think you need to solve to the impact that you're going to have on the wider society. Easy as, promise. And then the third tool in the suite is effectively your outcomes measurement space. And that just walks you through, here are my outcomes. What are the indicators of change that I need to have in place that will demonstrate that I'm making my way to success, that I'm progressing? And then what are the tools and timings that I need to consider to actually collect that data and make sure I'm measuring it over the term of my project? Simple, she says. So to show you what it actually looks like in real time, you now get to laugh at my really poor typing. Huzzah! Very fun. I'm going to skip the tutorials again because, of course, I know you know how to work your way around a website. And I'm going to do something that our gorgeous grant assessors find stupidly amusing. This is our running joke. What I tend to do when I go into demo this is I just stick in my name. First name this project, my name's in it. What we've seen lately, which is gorgeous because I've done so many of these workshops, is we've actually seen a few coming through with people's names on them rather than the project name, because they've watched me do it and they've gone, oh, you just put your name in. No, you don't. You put the name of your project. So I always make a joke and say, look, I'm a work in progress, therefore a project unto myself. However, put your project name in there, and it can be a few words. It doesn't have to be highly detailed. Just say a little bit about what you're doing. So, you know, it might be designing a digital solution for X, Y, and Z. So you could put that in there as your project name. Confirm your name, and then it'll jump you directly into your tools. Now, one of the things I will say, although I've already got it set up this way, is if you're working from a laptop, make sure you've scaled your screen to 100%. Most laptops are set by default to 150. And that's not a gorgeous, I guess, user experience for you on here, because you end up having to scroll around the screen up and down and side to side. If you're set to 100, then you'll see it all on your laptop screen, much nicer to play in. First thing I'm going to do is jump into your logic model, because as mentioned, that's kind of the guts of your application or of your project design. And the reason I don't actually jump into our theory of change first is once you've fleshed this piece of work out, it's a lot easier to then go back and I guess create a pithy vision statement around how you're going to do that. It's a lot easier to understand, I guess, the crux of that work if you've gone through the process of really logically laying it out in front of you. You can pick that up so much easier. So jumping in here, you can see that it's really quite a simple creature. It's just, you know, it's boxes on a page, nothing complex, nothing to be frightened of. Although when we say logic models to people, quite often, you know, they drop their bundle and go, oh my God, this all looks very complex. Promise it isn't. And as you go through, you can see there are heaps and heaps of prompts and opportunities for you to just test that what you're popping in here is exactly what's needed. So you can see in each of these little boxes, as you go through, there is a little explainer in the corner. The issue and opportunity is the problem you want to solve. So basically, or it could be an opportunity that you want to take advantage of, like potentially you might want to create an event that brings people together. Something like that might be considered an opportunity. And something like, you know, issues that you have, socio-economic issues that you might have in a region, those kinds of things will be considered an issue. So you can flesh that out here. But the one thing that I would say about this space is this is the space where you need to include a little bit of detail about how you know it's a problem. So remember Emma's amazing tool, the Community Insights Australia tool, that's where you can pull some of that great data from. So you go, Mel is hangry, has no cake, desperate times, and then you might say something like ABS stats show more biting incidences in WA. So there you've identified the problem that you want to solve, but you've also identified what shows you that it's a problem, and you can pick some of that information up from the Community Insights Australia tool. But you're also likely to have stuff that you're using yourself. You have stats you've already collected. You have community engagement you've already done. You have research papers that you've scanned up from other unis, those kinds of things. You can use those as evidence that your problem is something that you need to solve here. So don't think that you only have to go to your ABS or your CIFA or your Mental Health Commission stats. Stats are everywhere, and as long as you can reference them, that's good enough for us. Jumping on into inputs, this is a fancy old way of saying the resources that you need to make your project sing. So this is when you identify, okay, we've got an issue. What do I need to actually put a project together that's going to meet that need where it is? So we've got no cake. We're very hangry. Clearly, we need to make cake. So inputs might be, we're probably going to need to start with funding, because we're always going to need to start with funding if that's what we're doing. So let's say we need $50 from Lotterywest. We might need $20 from City of Vincent. Bless City of Vincent. I just happen to live in the City of Vincent, so we'll ask the mayor. I might want to put in $10 from organisational resources, and there we're starting to build our funding pool. But then you're also going to need some stuff and things. You're going to need some ingredients. You're going to need some cake tins. You're probably going to need to hire an oven. You might need a baker on contract, because we don't fund FTE as a business as usual, but we can and do occasionally fund contract resources. So if you're going to need resources, make sure you put them in there with contract in brackets. Hot tip. You might also need, we might run a bake sale. You might need some volunteers to run your bake sale. So there you've started to look at the resources, which are not just money, they're not just stuff and things, they could be people. They could even be, let's say research and evidence. I'm going to need to go to the recipe books because I can't bake for anything. So there you go. So we're starting to build the picture of all the inputs. Now, these are cool because you can move them around. And in being able to move them around, you can organise them by order of priority. And I think that's always a good idea if you're using this for funding. And the reason I say that is sometimes you won't get all the funding that you're going for. You might get 60% of it or 70% of it. In your mind, you need to have a picture of how much is my minimum amount of funding that I need to make this project sing in some form. And your deprioritized list, the stuff that's down the bottom, just keep that in the back of your head is, what can I drop off if I only get X amount of funding? So just think of that in terms of this. So let's say, maybe I can bake it myself. So maybe I go to the recipe books and give it a shot myself at creating a bake sale. We can reorder that. Definitely going to need an oven as a priority. Don't have one at home, that kind of thing. So do those kinds of things. Often people will do that in order of cost too. So they'll prioritize the big end budget stuff and think, well, maybe we can do some additional fundraising for the smaller stuff at the other end of the scale. Not a bad way to look at it. So the next one, and I'll shoot this up so that you can see that a bit better. The next one is activities. It's exactly what you think it is. It's what am I going to do? So this is what I need. This is what am I going to do? So anything that takes time is considered an activity. So don't just think of, I'm going to create a thing. Think of all the things that you might need to do to set your environment, your enabling environment around your project. And it might be that you need to do community consultation. Do people even want a bake sale? So that's something that takes time. It might not necessarily take a lot of dollars, but you know that it's something that you need to factor in your time budget for your project. You might need to, let's say we need to train our baker. We've put a few cute little popular options down the bottom here. We're going to have a bake sale. We're probably going to need a food license, etc., etc. And again, these ones are movable around. So let's say the first thing that you need to do is obtain your permits and approvals, because you can't go ahead with your bake sale if you haven't got them. Then you would move that up to the top. The other thing that I'd say to do here is where in your inputs you prioritize maybe by the things that you think you can't do without if you don't get all of your funding. Activities you want to prioritize probably by sequence, order of events. So you want to actually put that in order in the way that you might transfer this information into a grant application. So you just can copy paste this in, flesh it out, but you've already got a lovely sequenced events that plans out the things that you're going to do in the order that you're going to do them, which is a bit of a bonus. So next thing I'm going to do, and please excuse me scrolling down a little bit. Where is my scroll bar? Now I'm going to have to do that with my fingers, aren't I? Oh, no, okay. Why is that not playing with me? Have I not set it? Hang on 2 seconds for me, humans. I'm just going to have a look and see if I forgot to set my display. No, we are at 100%. I thought we were. Okay. There's my scroll bar. Oh, my scroll bar's disappeared. This is very odd for me. Don't know why it has, but that's a bit special, isn't it? All right. Can I move it across with my fingers? No, I can't. All right. Anyway, outputs. Alrighty, outputs is a fancy way of saying the count of things for us. So really we're the only place for us where people get truly tripped up in terms of the difference between things is outputs and outcomes. Two quite similar words to mean two quite different things. In effect, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump over here. I'm going to go straight to impacts. The reason I'm doing that is because Lotterywest, if you are using this for Lotterywest funding specifically, has dropped its priority areas here. And for us, you do need to have one. Now, you don't have to use these. And if you have a project-specific impact that you want to demonstrate, put that in here rather than ours. But if you are going for Lotterywest funding, always good to have a Lotterywest priority area. In fact, mandatory. Then jumping backwards from that, we've also been kind enough to whack our outcomes, which you will have seen under the priority areas in the community investment framework. So for us, you need to have a primary outcome that actually links into that impact area. Now, because I know them all by heart, I know what I'm looking for. But if you're looking for something and don't know which outcomes meet which impacts, just print out your community investment framework and stick it up on your desk. I happen to know that raised community connection and participation goes with inclusive, thriving WA communities. But I'm also going to choose a secondary outcome. I think cake's going to make me much more mentally healthy. So good for me. So you can see here for us, impacts are the long-term changes that we want to achieve almost at a societal level. So quite large. So if you are looking for real change in a community, this is your impact. Now, over here, your outcomes are effectively the difference you expect your project to make specifically. So this is, those key outcomes that when you're acquitting or when you're finishing up your project, these are the things you're really looking for. So basically I've popped a couple in there, but I'm also going to put a project specific one in there so you can see what happens effectively when you are creating your own. So let's say the outcome is happy, less bitey, Mel. Nice. Bitey, I know, not a word. Anyway. Then we jump back to outcomes, which, as I said, quite different, outputs, I should say, which is quite different to outcomes. Here, for us, we're really looking at the stats. So we tend to be looking at almost your qualitative versus your quantitative kinds of measurements here. So let's say for something like this, we're looking for some interesting stats. We're going to say we involved 20 volunteers in cake making and selling. Brilliant. We had 250 people attend the bake sale. Amazing, very popular bake sale. We ran 3 cake making workshops, etc. So you can see there you're building a picture of some really nice stats there, which can underpin your outcomes because they're a little bit of a, how did we achieve those outcomes? Well, here are the things that really came out of the activities that we did. Then jumping down into the bottom, you jump into your assumptions and risks. Assumptions is effectively what is the environment that I'm working in that we know is going to enable our project? So it might be that you've got local government support and they're going to give you licenses and a little bit of funding. So that's kind of an enabling environment for you. Another assumption that might be that you have a great day for a bake sale. Amazing. Another assumption might be that Mel is appeased by cake and that there's not some underlying mental health issue that means she's biting people for another reason. Probably in this environment, in this world, there probably is. But then we'll jump into risks. So 2 things. A lot of people who are looking for funding don't like to talk about risk, and I get it. We all get it. The reason they don't like to talk about risk is often because they believe that in disclosing risk, your funding body will see you as a risky organisation or your project as a risky project. It really is to tell us how mature your organisation is in thinking about risk. So it's not about, us being punitive and saying you won't get your funding if there are risks. We absolutely know there's risk in every project. There is no project without risk, right? You know this, we know this. So nobody's going punitive around this. Basically, what we're asking you to do here is to actually just identify a few things that you know, hey, this could be a problematic thing for our project. And, if it's an outdoor something, we always know, weather prohibits outdoor activity. Ooh, there you go, probots. Anyway, so you can see what happens when Mel types in real time. Now, if you are still a little bit nervous about talking to your wrist, there is one way that you can make yourself a little bit less nervous. You can actually pop your mitigation strategy in here. So you might say contingency plan is town hall. So you might look at that, and then you've already told your funding body, your stakeholders, we've thought about this, we do have a plan B. Local government might be having a bad day. Local gov having a bad day, no support. Things could change in your environment. So sometimes you can think as your risks as the inverse of your assumptions, but there might be other risks. You're working with ovens, potential for burns, and then you might want to articulate first aid plan in place. So you've acknowledged that you've got a plan to manage it. Now that's very oversimplified, of course, putting this down here because it's making a lot of noise. Shout to my drink bottle. Then you would go into the next stage. As I said, very oversimplified. Depending on how much funding you're looking for, your project might be a lot more complex than this, but we'll talk proportionality in a little moment. Again, it's going to try and take you through to that cute little video, which explains what to do next. I'm skipping it because I'm explaining what to do next. And you'll see that it's pulled all your outcomes through from the previous plan. Bonus means you don't have to remember what you said. Now, if you jump in here, add an indicator, then that'll open out for you in this bigger screen. And you can see that indicators are basically your measure of change. So this is what you're effectively measuring your outcome against. Now, Lotterywest has been lovely. If you're using a Lotterywest outcome, we've actually collected some validated indicators from indicator banks that are validated by researchers. What that means is that we know that if you're measuring against this, you're probably quite likely to actually be able to demonstrate change. Bonus. I'm going to show you where it gets squiffy for you in a moment. But let's say we had, let's say we had community feeling inspired to take action. So we've had a whole bunch of volunteers come together and do a bake sale. They've fundraised like pros. We loved that. So how might we measure something like that? So you need to think about the data that you're going to collect for that. Now, something like feeling inspiration, and you know this already if you've tried to measure change in these kinds of spaces, and particularly in the social impact, social enterprise space, measuring those beautiful human qualitative things can be really difficult. So what I will say to you is, particularly for Lotterywest, you don't need to have a whole bunch of numbers, stats, those kinds of things that prove this. It is actually okay to just talk to people. That is data. Things like testimonials or little video testimonials, those kinds of things are data. So don't necessarily get yourself caught up in thinking that, something that is a human-centric or conversational collection of data isn't legitimate. It absolutely is for us. And particularly depending on the, the quantum of money you're going for, we're actually not asking for a lot of this kind of measurement, which is a bonus, and I'll show you what that looks like in a bit. So let's say community feeling inspired to take action. Let's say you've got your bake sale on the day. You've got a whole bunch of cool people there. They're buying up stuff. They're feeling great about fundraising. They're feeling inspired. You could just do a little video poll. So something that simple, you could go around and talk to 4 or 5 people, maybe 10 if you've got time, and go, what did this event make you feel? Or has this inspired you to do something great? What are you going to do next? That kind of thing. It can be as simple as that, and it doesn't have to be big surveys and, going around with your iPad, trying to force people to do stuff. The other thing is a lot of that stuff these days, and I'm sure you know this already, isn't really working for people. I'm sure if you've sent out surveys, everybody's got a little bit of survey fatigue, a little bit of engagement fatigue. So finding some fun way for them to be engaged in that sort of data collection is really key, particularly for youth. Youth are not very interested in taking big surveys. They're much more interested in getting engaged in collecting the data themselves and giving it to you. So something like a photo voice project where you say to them, you know, here's a little app on your phone. You go and click a few photos of things that are really important to you about this event and give us a little Instagram caption and we'll pop it on our Instagram. Well, there's an amazing way to collect data that they're going to have fun with and that you don't even have to DIY, which is a total bonus. So something like a video poll, that's going to be at your event in the time. So you just put something like as required or end of project. But let's say what you're trying to do here is measure an increase in something. So we're going to say improved mental health. That's an increase in something because you need something to do that. What you need is to know where you started from. Now, that might come from the stats you've already put in your issues space. So you've collected some from, say, ABS or Mental Health Commission, CEFA. So you know what that looks like for your area. That way you may be able to measure the volume of people you've touched, and that can show an improvement. But you do need to always have that baseline in place. So you need to know where you're starting from. So let's say your project is targeting a very, very specific set of people. Actually, I'm going to change this one. I'm going to go increased overall life satisfaction because mental health and cake, really not sure of the correlation. But increased overall life satisfaction, I'm always more satisfied when I have cake, but how would we measure that for a group of people? Well, something like that is where you might want to use 2 surveys. They might only be 3 questions each. It doesn't have to be massive data gathering, but you might want to do that at the beginning and at the end of your process so that you're actually measuring change over time. So let's say it is a little survey and you're doing that. Again, you would actually want that at the start of your project and at the end of your project. So that might even be that you're just doing that with your volunteers because those are the people that you know are going to start with you and end with you. You might want to even do that as a measure of how many volunteers you've actually got in that space, that kind of thing. So then you'd save those indicators and you can just keep building. You can have a few indicators for each outcome, depending on how big your project is and how complex it is. You might want to measure a few different things because effectively, this is the data that you're collecting for your acquittal reporting at the end of your project or for your impact reporting back to your stakeholders and board. Now, here's where it gets squiffy for you. When your outcome is your own project specific outcome, not a Lotterywest outcome, you don't have one very special thing, and that's those validated indicators that we've already collated for you. So what's in here effectively is nothing. Bonus. So that means one of 2 things. You can jump into other indicator banks to find that in that kind of thing. So UTS particularly, which is University Tech Sydney, they have some really great indicator banks that are quite broad. So if your project is environmental and you're looking for something that's maybe not a Lotterywest specific outcome, but quite specific to something that you're doing around marine science or something like that, you'll find amazing indicators in there around that, which you might not find in the Lotterywest validated sets. But the other thing you can do is design your own, DIY a good indicator. What is a good indicator of a happy, less bitey Mel? Let's see, fewer people display bite marks in the community. Great, we know we can measure that thing. We can see that. We can actually ask people, have you been bitten this week? No, I haven't. Bonus, that's a lot less than last week. So that sort of thing we can do. And that might too, you might do a survey for something like that. You might do little interviews, you might do testimonials. I think it's probably something that you could do a little testimonial, ask people, has the incidence of biting reduced for you? And then you might actually even just do that. You could do that at the start of the project and at the end of the project, so you are measuring that over time. I think that's probably a good, smart move. How many people were bitten before the project? How many people were bitten when the project ended? So you've got that. So then you're saving your indicators. You've got your DIY indicator there, and then all you're doing is jumping in here and going, team members, what do we got? All right, well, we've probably got, let's say we've got our project manager. We've got our bite victims. We've got our volunteers, we've got our baker, et cetera, et cetera. So you're building a profile of who's involved in this. For you guys, you don't need everyone. You know, it might be just your kind of team leaders for the project. So you might have a project manager, you might have an events manager, you might have, say, your chair of your board involved. You might have some project partners that are really instrumental, pop them in there. And it's usually a pretty good idea if you can to name them, but sometimes those people will be contract. And so you won't have recruited because some of the money you're using is for those contracts. So you might not know that, in which case just pop that in there, because that'll remind us, actually, that's not been recruited for yet, but it is going to be a key resource for the project. Now, this is what I want to show you when we save and continue. You can see that if you don't put something in, you just get a nice old blank space, nada in there. But the tools that you have completed are all down here. You can export each of these separately, so as separate sheets. They come out as PDFs, so you can get them separately or on one large document. And, you know, depending on how much detail you put in here, they're not terribly big. They're usually kind of planned to a page kind of deal. But then if you're coming to us for $5 million, you know, it might be more like, you know, 6 or 7 pages worth of information. Now, because we didn't do this, we need to go back and complete that tool. So you jump in to complete that tool, don't panic. It takes you back to before you get started, and people panic and go, oh my God, I've lost all my data. You absolutely haven't. Just jump into I'm ready to start. I'm going to be working on our developers to make this a bit less confusing, but there we go. So this is what our theory of change looks like. And if you have seen theories of change before, which I'm sure you all have, that's not what they usually look like. I'm going to say I'd characterize this more as a vision statement rather than a full-blown theory of change. So if what you're looking is that whole theory of change process, I'd really sort of key into that logic model and flesh that right out, popping this at the top as your, I guess, as your overview, if you like. Now, it doesn't need to be, for us particularly, it doesn't need to be complex. I'll show you a few examples. A community project example there. So developing a volunteering program for young people. We can address youth social isolation in the local area, which will lead to a greater sense of well-being and belonging. So that kind of thing, it's really your highest order outcomes, if you like, the big impacts that you're going to make. Environmental project example, that kind of level of detail doesn't need to be monstrous. Some of you will have a few key outcomes that you really want to flesh out in here. Just pop them in as with commas between them. So you might want to say in here, we can address the low rates of volunteering and biodiversity loss, which will lead to. So you can do that in there if you've got a few sort of key activities and outcomes you want to flesh out. So I'm going to say by making and eating great cakes together, we can, why did that happen? That's because I'm used to writing a capital at the beginning of a sentence. We can address the biting incidences in the community, which will lead to happier and less bruised community members. There we go. So we fleshed it out. We've said, all right, by doing a thing, we can address an issue and it's going to lead to an outcome. Easy peasy. Lovely thing about this, and I'm going to tell you a secret about it later. But then you just jump through, continue to review. If you're happy with everything that's there, you save and export and you dump in your information here. What will then happen when you have done that is it sends this direct to your email. So you've got it in your hot little hands. Clearly, I've done this a few times before because I can pre-populate everything. So it exports and it looks like this. So you get two things. You get a project editor link, which means you can go back in 1,000 times and keep changing and growing and playing. So at no point in time, you have to hit save and export every time though. Don't just hit save. Make sure you hit save and export so it comes back to your email every time you save it. But you can keep building on it. So you can do a first pass and then you can go, hey team, let's test this together in a room. What have I missed? So you can put it up on a screen and work through that together. It's really quite a cool team exercise. One thing I will say to you about that is don't send the link out unless you're really happy with other people changing your work. So once they get their hot little fingers in there, we can't really retrieve it or version control it because we've designed it with max security and privacy for you in mind. So we can't see anything unless you submit it to us as a PDF. So from that perspective, if you want other people to be able to comment on it, send them the PDF rather than the link directly, and then they can go and pop their comments. You can consolidate that into your project editor, or again, you could do it as a team exercise in the room, but just have one person scribing. So I'm going to jump out of the Community Impact Planner now because that is all of the tools. Very soon we'll have a new one for you, which is also designed to pull up all the different data sets and different tools like survey tools, poll tools, video voice tools, photo voice tools, all of those for you. And that's coming soon. So I'll make sure I communicate with you when that comes through. But stop sharing and see if I can reshare, she says, hopefully, her PowerPoint. Do this. And I'm going to jump. Oh, can't see. Bump. There we go. So let's, I'm going to scooch through this multiple quick because I have gone over time as ever. So why does this actually apply to your grant applications? Well, how and why it does, is that you can take everything that was in your logic model, copy paste it into a grant application, then just flesh it out. And it will make everything very logical and clear for a grant assessor, which is all they really want to see. Bonus. We get a lot of War and Peace sort of applications where people write a lot of words to say a simple thing, or they write a lot of words but don't say the thing they need to. So in using this logic to kind of skeleton out or template out your project properly, you can use it to go for any different grant application. So the first thing our grant application actually asks you is give us a 50-word summary. Bonus, you can use your theory of change as your 50-word summary. You can just pick it straight up and copy it into your application. The next bit that you'll usually be asked in any grant application is define your problem. What is the issue you want to solve? Who's the beneficiaries? How have you identified it as an issue? And what is the data that backs that up? So that's that next bit that you would flesh out in an application proper. And as we've gone through that, you'll see that's in your issues space, but also in that community insights tool if you need to collect some data for it. Next bit, it'll ask you what change are you going to make in your community? What are you anticipating that your project will do that's big and pithy and amazing and that you're going to measure? So this is where you actually kind of jump to your impact measurement tool and go, what are the ways I'm going to measure this? What am I going to show people as an indicator of change? You can pick that all up and put that in there. Just keep in mind that while you can pick up your outputs and your outcomes for that section, make sure you're quite clear about the fact that there's a distinction between how many people came to a thing and what they learned or what it meant to them. So that is the difference between your outputs, who came, what did they learn, what did they take away, what did they implement as a result, what was the change in the community. The next bit will be around identifying those activities, and you've already sequenced them out. So again, you can copy paste them in, you can pop dates around them if you know when you're going to sort of hit target milestones, flesh them out a little bit, where in the activities section in the logic model, they might just be a sentence or a bullet point. You probably want to be 2 or 3 sentences that are a bit more descriptive, but you've already got your outline there, so you can use that. Also, tip here, make sure you do include all those things that take time, all your engagement and partnership activities and all that, you know, the work that you do to create the enabling environment for your grant or for your project is really important that you include that here for your assessors. This bit is really key. For us, these are just drop downs. But what happens in a lot of grant applications is people will ask you who benefits and how many. And people are not realistic with their figures around that. They tend to overestimate their key beneficiary groups. They can tend to think they're boiling the ocean. They can target everyone. Everyone's going to benefit. They tend to think, that social media stats or social media reach means that they've actually created change. And for us, that's not really the way that works. So it's a little bit better to be realistic and targeted around who it is you're really trying to create benefit for and how many people that cohort really is. But then wrap around that some of the, I guess, narrative, if you like, around what are the benefits for the community. So let's say you have a target group of, kids who are at risk at homelessness in a particular region, and we know that it's this number of people. We also know that that's going to impact on families, and it's going to impact on communities, and it's going to impact on schools. You're going to have a lot of wraparound, I guess, co-benefits of your project, and you can put that in the narrative, but don't put that in your numbers. The next bit is resources. Now, weirdly, while that comes right at the beginning of the logic model, it comes at the end of our grant application and at the end of most grant applications because it's tied to your budget. But this is not your wish list of stuff and things. This is more, what resources do you need and what do you need them for? So think about this as, not we need $5,000 for a bank of computers, but we need $5,000 for a bank of computers to enable our digital literacy program for seniors at our seniors centre. You've just fleshed out for us exactly how that piece of money impacts on the people that are your target beneficiary audience. So that's really key there. And again, you'll get all these slides, promise. So don't stress too much about trying to capture all of this. But then that next bit is, okay, that's the end of the application. We got our money. Huzzah, amazing. What do we do to plan for acquittal? Well, this is where collecting that data right throughout your project is key. Don't collect your data at the end of your project. It's a trap. It's an absolute trap because you end up running around trying to find retrospective information to prove your success, and it's really hard. People won't do a survey 3 months after something's finished. You're not going to be able to collect that information. You're much better doing it while your project's underway and people are inspired and part of it. So just make sure that you're doing it right throughout your project timeline and up to that end acquittal date. You've usually got 3 to 6 months for your acquittal processing. So you've got a little bit of time after your grant's wrapped up or your project's wrapped up to collect some more data and pop that into your impact reporting. The last thing I wanted to chat to you about before I open to you guys for questions is that evidence and proportionality. And by that, I just mean if you're not asking for much money, we're not asking for much evidence. You don't have to wrap yourself up in collecting a whole bunch of information if you're asking for less than 20K. For us at Lotterywest, all we ask for is that you identify those two outcomes, a primary and a secondary outcome, and you know what they are that you're working towards, and that you have some anecdotal evidence that you've made progress towards those outcomes. So really, yeah, that could be some testimony, some written testimonials from people that you worked with, or it could be some great photos of an event, that kind of thing. That's the limit, I guess, the expectation of data there. It is when you get up into the big end of town that we start going, no, we need really strong evidence that you have made change. Because for Lotterywest, that's evidence that we use too, to demonstrate to our stakeholders that the money that we're putting into the community is making impact. That's our social return on investment, and you all know how important that is. It's just as important to funding bodies as it is to social enterprises. We want to know we're doing good too, and we're doing good through you. So that is it. I will make sure that you get everything that's in the slide pack and then some. Question time. So I'm going to stop sharing so you can see my delightful face on screen. Big style. Alrighty.
Thanks,
Questions?
Melanie. That was amazing. I can start off with a question and then I might invite it back to the group. But when you're designing the program logic and adding in the resources that you're using, can you also report on the resources of impact measurement? Because it is quite a substantial time burden
definitely can
sometimes.
be.
And should we be resourcing that in our plans as well?
And when you say resources for them, what are you thinking?
Like the time it takes for data collection can be quite large. And I guess if you spell it out in the plan, does that look good? And also kind of, it displays Lotterywest the amount of time we're investing in it because it can be quite a lot.
Yes, but pop that in your activities rather than your resources. So that'll be one of your key activities is impact measurement. And particularly for you guys as social enterprises, it's key to what you do, right? So definitely something that you put in there because you're right, it can be a massive time drain on a project. Where you might put it in resources is if you need to contract in some expertise, which you might do. You might go, we need an expert for 2 days a week to actually sort of, deliver key parts of that process or key parts of your community engagement. They might actually be 2 parts of the same whole. So you might have a community engagement person who's also managing some of your impact work or your impact narratives. So yeah, just think about that from the terms of if you are doing that from a resourcing perspective, do you actually need a human? Are you actually needing human resourcing too? The other thing that I would say, and this might not really apply to you guys too much, is that very occasionally Lotterywest will make a condition of grant and evaluation. If and when we do that to you as a condition of grant, we actually also usually provide some funding for that, acknowledging that you might need to outsource your impact measurement for your evaluation. It doesn't often happen with smaller grants that we commission an evaluation. It's usually very large, very complex, multi-stakeholder.
Thank you.
Easy. Questions? I saw that there was stuff in the chat, but I can't actually see it now. Shall I jump?
Abby was wondering if there was regional data available in the Track Your Community tool. Yeah.
100%. You can, any region that you want to, you can actually do it Australia-wide, but you can do it RDC region, so Regional Development Commission region, if you want to go sort of broad region, but it goes right down to SA1 level. So SA1 level by ABS stats is 600 people in a community. So you can go that granular if you really wanted to. So right down to suburb level. And you can do that by effectively drawing like a GIS model around your region that you want to target. So you can just say, oh, well, I want to do 3 suburbs across a particular area. And so you could draw a map around those if you wanted to. Yeah, or you can, in and out as you see fit.
And on that, does it have the sources of the data and the year that it was?
Sorry, I couldn't show that to you today, but over in the corner, there's a little info button. You click on that. It'll tell you a little bit about the indicator, so what it is that was measured in that particular statistic, and then you open that up and it opens up to source of the data, when it was last updated and when it's due to be updated next. So you can jump into that if you want to and dig a bit more into that data, or you can use the stats as they come up.
Thank you. Incredibly helpful to know that exists. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? And the lovely thing about that one is that tool usually costs about 10K a year for organisations to license. But Emma was super generous with Lotterywest and allowed us to effectively pull in all the data sets that Lotterywest grant seekers would use sort of most relevantly to them and give it as a blanket license. So you can go in there, you can drop out reports. There are some really cool reports that you can drop out for regional data and that kind of stuff. Worth a play. Definitely worth a play.
Thanks.
Just with that, I was wondering if it does have this capability or in the future to see the types of organizations who are supporting, let's just say there's like that amount of statistic from mental health, like organizations supporting that. So then in your grant application, you could point out your point of difference or the statistics of maybe there's not many people competing in that area.
Oh, that's a really good question, and not something that really kind of exists so much in that tool, in the Community Insights tool, where I would say you could look for some of that data, but again, only relevant to Lotterywest and Healthway is in our grants portal, because that'll tell you could pop in mental health and it'll pop up who's been funded in the mental health space over the last couple of years. So you can have a look at who's got what kind of dollars for what kind of project in what region, and that's always a good way to sort of do a bit of a test of, am I duplicating efforts here? Should I be collaborating rather than, recreating? But in terms of a sort of more broad brush approach to that around other funders, not yet, but I'm going to take that under advisement because we always want new ways to make the hub sort of more relevant to our users. And again, we do every year, we actually do a bit of a strategic planning session. So if that's something that's really valuable to you guys, and we're trying to do a big mapping exercise, pop it through so that I can just make sure my upline are aware of this.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'll keep it in mind.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions? I've talked at you so much that you're all mentally exhausted.
Oh, I think
You
you
just want
covered
to go get some
everything.
cake.
You covered things really well. You explained it really well. So I
Oh, thank you.
think I
Thanks
had
very
questions,
much.
but then you got to them. So
Oh, good. Oh, I love that. Well,
Actually,
yeah,
Mel,
everything
can
is
I
free.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Mel, Anushka here. If I was to go through that process for Plenty, can I get feedback? You said that there's a
100% you
team.
can.
Okay.
And that is one part of my role that I offer to all of you, as my parting wish for you is that you keep me employed. Is that I do one-on-one sessions with organisations, so I can come out and even do with you. You can DIY it yourself. It's free. You can send your stuff back to me for feedback. If you are really feeling not so confident, if you want me to do a draft first pass with you, something like that, I do any and all of those things, either online or in person. And the other thing that I would say is those are non-branded. So when the creature falls out into your hot little hands in your email, there's no branding on it at all. So you can literally submit it to everyone and everything, and it doesn't have Lotterywest or Healthway on it anywhere. So yeah, feel free to go to town. And we can't see it unless you submit it to us. We can't view it. So you can plan your backyard renovation or your long service leave travel if you want to. You plan whatever you like. I went out to City of Belmont and helped them do their art strategy with it. So there's a whole bunch of different ways you can apply the tools to different kind of practical things. But yes, absolutely, avail yourself of me. The more you do, the longer I get to keep my job here.
Thanks. That's great. Thank you. I will do that.
Excellent. Anyone else got exciting things? You guys are all amazing, by the way. I just love being in the presence of social entrepreneurs doing good crap. It's my favorite thing. It's actually my favorite thing.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I think I've taken a lot of notes this session, and it's something that we all do all the time, is talking about our impact and reporting on it, but it always helps to get such detailed explanations of how to do it right and how to do it fast, and
I think
how to
that's
include
what
the
we
right
want
amount of
from
information
people.
for the size of the grant, because it can be really overwhelming. And it's so nice to know that we can get that feedback, because the grants can be very time consuming, but when you kind of walk us through this process, it kind of really takes a lot of that load off of not knowing how much time it should take or how big this process is. So thank you so much for sharing today, Melanie. It's been so nice to have you. And there's some really amazing people on the call, and Simone, I feel like you could be offering a lot of these services in your work. I think it's so what you're doing, and it's thank you so much for sharing this with us. And I'll be sharing out a recording of this session and the slides to everyone in the call, but they'll also be available on our website. So if you have any people in your networks that you think could benefit from this, you can always send them the video.
Brilliant.
And that's all. I think just to sign off, I think I'll say thanks for coming, and our next event is in about a month, also online. So hopefully we will send an email newsletter out about that next event. I'm great to see you all there. And any final questions, feel free to email Melanie, who's hosted our event, and I'll share her email address. And thank you so much for that kind offer to review grant applications. That's really huge. And if there's not
My
anything
pleasure.
else, I might sign off there, but feel free to stick around and ask any more final questions, or head off the call if you're ready to go.
You're awesome, True. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thanks very
much.
much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rosie.
Thank you. It's so generous for you to offer to do one-on-ones. I think that will be really valuable for us. So
Oh,
we'll take
my
you
pleasure.
up on it.
Please do. Please, please do. Keeps me out of the office.
Bye.
Thanks,
See you soon,
guys.
team.
Bye.
Thanks, Mel. That was amazing. Oh, hi. Oh, Trixie as well. Hi. Sorry I didn't introduce you earlier. I totally did a brain fart and forgot.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll see you on Thursday next week.
Yeah, see you next week. Have a good one.
Yeah, you
Cool.
too. See
See
ya.
ya.
Bye.